So today I'll be refuting Royce's claim that U.S. pennies have a negative effect on the U.S. economy, and his secondary claims are: 1, pennies have a higher production cost than they're actually worth; 2, pennies are now obsolete; and 3, pennies are rarely put back into circulation. For his first claim, Royce made a claim that it costs 2.4 cents to create 1 penny. I did not provide much statistical evidence to support this, but through my research I found that it ranged between 1.5 to 1.8 cents per penny. But according to the New Yorker, pennies do cost more than they are worth at the time they are produced, but they accrue more value over time as they are circulating through the economy due to inflation and due to interest rates. Additionally, he made a claim that pennies way back in 1700s, 1800s costed more. Like a pound of beef costed 18 cents then, where it costs maybe a few dollars now. I found that this was irrelevant because that has to do more about the strength of the US dollar rather than how much a penny is worth. For a second claim, pennies are now obsolete. I found that pennies do still have their applications. According to the LA Times, charities raise a significant amount of their money through the loose change in people's pockets. So pennies still do have their benefits. Additionally, a fear that people have if the penny was removed, that prices would round up to the nearest nickel, to the nearest 5 cents, and that would increase the consumer's expenditures, so maybe they'd think twice about purchasing something, and they'd have less purchasing power, and that in turn may even harm the economy if the penny was taken out. So, additionally, his third claim, pennies are really put back into circulation. He pulled his evidence from Bloomberg's article, Trash Piles Yield Treasure as Sifters Seek Sooty Coins and Ashes, describes loose change lost in landfills is about $61.8 million. And loose change does not just mean just pennies, it means nickels, dimes, quarters, etc. So a fraction of that is just pennies. Additionally, he cited a few more ways that pennies are lost, such as like $575,000 lost in just airports through luggage and whatnot. But if you total it all up, he stated that $10 billion were lost annually. However, if you total all the loose change that was lost, that only totals to less than 1% of that annually lost. So I felt that it failed to have a significant impact on his claim. Additionally, he referenced other countries that had success after they dropped their lowest value form of currency. But I thought this is also irrelevant because we shouldn't compare our economy to other countries' economies, because our economies are based on different things. Our economy may be based on different services and products, rather theirs based on different services and products. And additionally, their economic growth may not be necessarily due to them dropping that. They may have seen a steady increase in economic growth, and just dropping it doesn't really affect it that much. So in conclusion, I felt that the advocate did not stray away from his main claim that pennies are negative have a negative impact on the U.S. economy, but rather they should just be taken out.
All right, the structural stuff is fine at the beginning, and you signpost on the first point. the difference between 1.5 cent, 1.8 cent, and 2 cents, I'm not exactly sure how important that is. You seem to acknowledge that it costs more to manufacture than the value of the penny, and so it's just a question of how much more. That I don't think that gets you much. However, I do like the argument that you suggest that they actually accumulate value after a while because of the passage of time and because of inflation. And I'm going, okay, that sounds like an interesting argument. It's not as clearly explained as it needs to be, and I think there's a point there, but it needs to be followed up on, and you don't really have much content on that idea. So it ends up being primarily a press rather than a good counterclaim, and I think you need something more. On your second point, when it came to it being obsolete, I thought you had a pretty good counterclaim here, and that is that there continues to be a utilization of pennies, especially small change like this, for a variety of purposes. And the one that you cite are charities, which I thought that's a good idea. But I think this would be a stronger argument if you had some follow-up that could show how the March of Dimes actually is a March of Pennies, or how the Salvation Army collects pennies at Christmas time and it turns into big bucks that they can use to help the homeless or get people back on their feet in some situation. I think that would have been a good follow-up to that particular point, and then we'd have a stronger justification for continuing to have this last small piece of change that we're talking about. And then the circulation issue, I'm not exactly sure what the impact of the $61 million in dumps is and why that is important for either direction. Your argument seems to be that it's a small amount. You mentioned $10 billion and it's less than 1%. I'm going, wait a second, it's less than 1% of what? What is this? Where'd the $10 billion figure come from? I can't really tell what it is you're saying here. I'm sure that you had a reason for including it, but I can't tell you what it is based on what was presented here. The challenge to whether or not we ought to be comparing ourselves to other nations, I think that's mostly smoke and mirrors here. You don't have any evidence to suggest there's a substantial difference. There's no reason why the coinage would be a substantial issue. I do think you have a good press to suggest that there's not really much demonstration that those economies did better because of losing their smaller change. I think that's a good challenge to make, but I do think it's also important to point out that, for example, on that second point, that we do have ways that we generate money that maybe they don't generate money in other parts of the world, like the charity thing. And if you had anything else, that would be good too. I'm not sure what they would be, but I thought that was a pretty good argument to begin with. Okay, thank you.